Hello and welcome to another episode of a Brothers Creed podcast where we talk about motivation, experiences, and explore the world around us. We're the Thomas Brothers. I'm Ethan.
And I'm Jared, and today we're talking about self-doubt, and we're also talking about self-respect. These are kind of not exactly opposite ends of the spectrum, but having self-respect is so important, especially in a world where people might not respect you. Not everyone's gonna always respect you. So it's important to start with yourself, and then sometimes if you have self-doubt, that might creep into you not having that confidence in yourself. So we're going to talk about them, talk about ways to recognize that you maybe do have self-doubt, ways that you can gain more self-respect, and show others that you respect yourself. Because if you don't respect yourself, no one else is going to respect you. We're going to talk about that, and then I have some cool stories to share, and it'll be good. This is some great attributes to study and add to your creed.
All right, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
Most valuable commodity I know of is information.
And that, my friends, is called integrity. That's called courage. Now that's the stuff leaders should be made of.
Either you're somebody or you're nobody.
You're not the devil. You're practice.
All right, so today I want to just start off with talking a little bit about, let's define self-respect and self-doubt. Like Jared was saying, they're not really opposites, but they're kind of they're different, right? Obviously, self-respect, I would say, is more of a positive thing if you have it, and self-doubt is more of a negative thing if you have that. But self-respect is an attitude of valuing oneself as a human being. It is a belief that you are worthy of love, respect, and dignity simply because you exist. It involves treating yourself with kindness, compassion, and understanding, and acknowledging that your own needs and your own boundaries and what you need to be happy and to survive. So that's kind of self-respect as far as I thought.
Yeah.
Then kind of be related to self-esteem or self-worth.
I actually looked at it a little bit. I was like, what's the difference between self-esteem and self-respect? And I saw this one thing that's kind of interesting. It said, differentiate self-respect and self-esteem. Self-respect refers to the regard that an individual has for himself. It is this respect that makes the individual act in such a way that he will be valued by himself. On the other hand, self-esteem refers to the appreciation that an individual has for his abilities and skills. So they're like the way this website defined it is slightly different. One is self-respect, just saying like I deserve to be respected as a human being. My word deserves to be respected. But the other one's more of like esteem is like I have confidence and appreciation for my skill sets and my abilities.
I kind of felt like self-respect was kind of an internal sense of self-worth, I guess. Yeah. It wasn't dependent on kind of external validation.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes maybe self-esteem is.
Seems like it's more like ability and skill focused. Maybe not externally validated, but it's like validating yourself in the skills that you have, and like recognizing that.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of the other one, self-doubt. For me, this referred to a lack of confidence or belief in oneself or one's abilities. It is an internal questioning or uncertainty about one's worth, capabilities, decisions, and actions. And it kind of went along with the last episode we talked, or a couple episodes ago, we talked about indecisiveness. It was kind of self-doubt was kind of similar to indecisiveness of just constantly questioning your your actions and your decisions and your capabilities and things like that.
Yeah. One thing I liked about one definition I found about self-respect I liked, it says self-respect is loving yourself and treating yourself with care. It's the result of staying true to your values and not being willing to compromise. There was a licensed clinical psychologist named Jamie Zuckerman from Philadelphia that said, quote, "Our level of self-respect acts almost like a blueprint to instruct others how to engage with us." Close quote. I like that. However you respect yourself is a blueprint of how other people are going to respect you. This person continues and says, when we develop healthy reciprocal relationships, we find ourselves surrounded by those who respect us, support us, and treat us how we want to be treated. So I like that. You have to respect yourself first to get that. What is that? Roger Dangerfield. He's like, I get no respect. It's like, well, maybe you guys start respecting yourself first, bud.
Yeah, that was one of the first things that, I had kind of looked into. Why is self-respect important? I mean, what benefit can it add in our life? And I mean, it was saying that self-respect is just important because it's kind of the foundation of a healthy and fulfilling life, I think, first off. But one of the first things that it talked about was that it sets the tone for how others treat you. When you respect yourself, you show others that you have self-worth and how you expect them to treat you with dignity and respect. And, if someone is like, and I see this at work sometimes too, I come across people at work that they're like, oh, I'm so dumb. Oh, I'm so stupid. Oh, I always make mistakes, or you talk with friends. It's like, oh, I'm so fat, or I'm so this, or I'm so stupid because of this. It's like, man, like it reminds me of the adage, right? As a man thinketh, so is he.
Mm-hmm.
If you constantly berate yourself and I'm fat and I'm stupid and I'm dumb and I can't make any right decisions and I can't this and I can't that, then it's just like, and you're constantly telling other people that, what are other people going to think? Other people are going to think, well, I mean, are you trying to convince me? Or like,
yeah.
And so I think that having kind of that tone of dignity and respect for yourself, and it doesn't mean we won't make mistakes, or maybe we do make a dumb mistake, or maybe we are a little bit overweight or whatever else. But it's just like, I think just constantly berating yourself, you need to build yourself up versus that. Another one why it's important is that I think just having self-respect supports your mental and emotional well-being in general. I think if you can learn to love yourself, which is hard sometimes, I think it ebbs and flows. That's just good in general. And then I think it helps you make better decisions in your life. If you have goals and desires and self-respect of, maybe I'm trying to become better, so I'm not going to do this, or I'm going to stop doing this other thing that I'm doing because I respect myself and I have worth. Or even I'm going to start talking to myself more positively. It helps you to make better decisions in life.
Yeah. I think so. I think that, for me, studying this one, I kind of really have been focusing on this one recently in my life personally. I think there's several things in here, like when I read through a list of like, how do you gain self-respect? Several of these things I've really tried to been doing in the past, maybe 5 years. I've really started to do these things more. Maybe it's just because I'm 35 now, and you're like, hey, I'm kind of coming into my, I'm at the point where it's just like, I kind of know what's going on, and I'm you're not totally an idiot. I don't know everything, obviously, but I'm pretty well aware where it's going on, and I think it's in time for me to be myself. And I think that some of the things here lend to that. So maybe I'll elaborate a little bit. So the first one here on the list is learn to say no. I think that sometimes people, organizations, they will ask you to do things that endless, ad nauseum. if you want to work 1,000 hours a week at work, if you want to create more time, you could work 24 hours. They'll let you. If you want to volunteer all of your time to whatever charitable organization you're giving your time to, they will let you because they will gladly take it. So it's important for you to be the own governor of your own time. And sometimes you like, and that's one thing that like some of these places, like they won't respect you. I felt that recently, about 2 years ago. I had a really demanding church calling. It was really affecting my family because I was gone all the time. And my family wasn't able to go to church really because it was really difficult for my wife to watch 4 kids at church. And I was just like, it's just to the point where so much was being asked that I just had to say no because I had to have that self-respect to say like, hey, you guys will take and take and take and take all I can give, but I need to respect myself and my family and do what's best for my family. And so that was a clear example of that to me. The next one here is choose a partner that respects you. I think the partner that you choose in life is one of the most important things. If you choose a partner that doesn't respect you or what you're trying to do, that can cause some resentment. And over time, that can cause some major problems. And so, whether you need to be respectful of your partner or you need to find a partner that's respectful of you, I think they both count. And being supportive and being respectful of their own desires and their own things that they want to do. The next one on the list here was one that was kind of pretty impactful to me. And this goes back to something you just said, Ethan, about like, you were talking about like negative self-talk or like people saying, oh man, like I'm bad at this or I'm bad at that. I think in some cases, like, let's say you have an employee and they're like, oh man, I keep messing up or whatever. And you're a greedy boss who doesn't want to give your people raises. Then, you're just like, wow, yeah, you did do bad, oh man, yeah, you keep messing up, oh man. And so it's almost like you're incentivized to keep perpetually putting your person down because then you don't have to give them a raise. Because then when it's time for them to come raise time, you don't have to, you're like, whoa, well, you remember you continually did all this stuff.
You said you were doing bad.
Yeah, you said you were doing bad the whole time. So something that this piece here, it said, showing self-respect means not being overly self-critical, judgmental, or restrictive. It's so easy to chain oneself to a to-do list and then gauge our worthiness on its completion. Practice making purposeful shifts towards self-kindness by saying to yourself as you finish one task and contemplate the next, say, I can do this or I could not. If I choose to stop now, I will allow whatever I have completed today to be enough, and I will not beat myself up for it. So that one for me is something that I've just started kind of accepting more, and like respecting myself. I'm a to-do list guy, so but I think that part of that is just what's kind of been taught into me, that unless you're being productive, there's always a million things to do. There's always endless things to do, and unless you're doing those things, you're not good. You're not worthy, or you're not favored in the eyes of your spouse or your kids or even God if you're not doing all this stuff. And so I think in some ways it's like if you're always in a state, if you feel like you're always down or you're always behind the 8 ball on something, then you're always going to feel that you're going to feel low and you don't have any self-respect. So it's kind of, there's a point where you say like, no, this is enough. I think that, this actually goes in direct contrast to something that, like a quote that I've heard a lot of times. It's like, I think actually our dad has a thing on his desk at work. It says, do it now. what does it say? Don't do it tomorrow, do it now. Do you know what it says?
I can't remember.
It says something like that. Do it now. And it's just like, and I was just thinking about that in relation to what this says here. And it's like, I understand, like, maybe like, don't just keep putting off everything. But at the same time, if you're always feeling like you have to do everything now, the weight of that can be crushing. And you're not respecting yourself and your own boundaries. And so I think that there's definitely a healthy balance there. And sometimes I feel like over the past 2 years or so of my life, I feel like in some areas that's been, and even back behind that, I feel like maybe I wasn't being as self-respectful enough because I was totally out of balance, and it was just, hey, you're always not doing enough. And so it's just like, well, I can only run so fast. And so, that was something that I really took out of this. A couple other ones here. Don't let others define your boundaries. So you define what it is that you want. For me, with my boundary, I was like, I'll wear a mask occasionally at the start of COVID, but I'm not getting vaccinated. That was my boundary. For some others, that boundary was the mask. For some others, the boundary was the booster shots. But sometimes I didn't want to let other people define my boundaries, and that was one of the things that recently I've also had some major life decisions to make about that. Be yourself and don't try to be so hard to be normal. That's a big one. Whenever you're in high school and you're in college, you're just trying to be the normal guy, right? You're trying not to be the odd duck out. You don't want to be the nail that's sticking out. So, it's not, just be yourself. Everybody's unique, and don't try to be so hard to be normal. And then the last one here is be honest with who you are and who you aren't. You disrespect your talents when you're not honest with yourself. I thought that was kind of cool. Like, if you're doing something that you feel like is underutilizing of your talents, you're disrespecting yourself and underutilizing those talents. Because you've been given that, or so that really made me think. It was like, sometimes I feel like that in my job. I'm like, man, in my day job, I'm underutilized in a lot of my talents. But I do a lot of stuff like podcasts and stuff outside of work that I do use my talents. But anyway, that was those were some how to gain self-respect. What'd you think, Ethan?
Yeah, I like that. My list was very similar. Boundaries was one that you talked about that was on my list. Set boundaries. I think that's definitely a good one. And everyone's boundaries are different. And that could be boundaries within your personal life, with relatives, with work, with the neighbors, with whatever. Set boundaries that will help you to progress. Another one that I thought was interesting, I don't think you mentioned, but just practicing self-care. And whether that's taking care of yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, that will build your self-respect. I mean, and I keep going back to this whole like overweight thing, but let's say somebody weighed like 800 pounds and they were just terribly, upset with themselves and their self-respect was terrible or whatever else. I mean, if they started to change their life, they started to eat a little bit healthier, maybe go out and get some exercise, walk up and down the street once or twice if they could, or heck, to the bathroom,
move
back,
their arms
whatever.
up and down. Yeah, if they're 800 pounds.
Whatever you could do. If you see positive progression, that is so motivating, and I think it's motivating because it gives you a sense of capability, being able to say, I can do this.
Yeah.
Right. I don't have to be this person that I've been telling myself I am, or that other people have been telling me that I am forever. Everybody says I'm a drunk, and I always say, well, I'm a drunk and everything else. But, if I stop drinking, hey, I might be able to do this. If I go a whole week and say, man, I'm not this person that I say or everyone else says I am.
Yeah.
So that was one that was important. And just exercise in general, I think, can just make people feel better and more self-respect. Self-reflection was always a good one. Journaling, meditating, gratitude journal, just focusing on happiness and the happy things that you have in life can just be positive. And then one of the last ones was living according to a set of values. That kind of sounds like
A creed.
living a creed,
Yeah, it does sound like that.
right?
Yeah.
Having a set of values that you live by
Mm-hmm.
and saying, I don't sway or I'm not deterred from living these principles. These principles are going to help guide my actions and the decisions that I make in my life. And that doesn't mean they can't change. You can update them, or you can drop some off, or you can change them, or whatever it might be. But living according to some values that you've set for yourself is a huge self-respect builder,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool. So there's a couple quotes that I had on self-respect that I kind of liked. And one of them was respect yourself. This is from Confucius, right? It's like Confucius saying,
Yeah.
right? Respect yourselves, and others will respect you. I
Yeah.
thought that one was a good one. Another one was to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment.
Yeah, that was
That's
being yourself, not trying to be normal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Ralph Waldo Emerson. And a couple things with that. One thing that you said is that sometimes, in society we are conned into, or we are suggested that we just be the same as everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes, sometimes you're the nail that sticks out. And the thing is that what happens to the nail that sticks out?
It gets hammered.
It gets hammered, right?
Yep.
And that's not always a bad thing. I think that teaches grit and resilience and everything else. But being able to be yourself when everyone else is just trying to be like everyone else, is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Kind of cool.
I had two quotes. This is not exactly, they're kind of related. Julius Caesar said, "Without training, they lacked knowledge. Without knowledge, they lacked confidence. Without confidence, they lacked victory." Thought that was cool. And then one, William Shakespeare, old Bill Shakespeare, as Chris Farley would say.
Old Billy boy.
He would say about self-doubt, he said, "Our doubts are traitors and make us lose the good we oft might win, but feared to attempt." So I do have a kind of an interesting story here. You may have heard this before, but it's a pretty cool story about self-worth and self-respect. So there's a father, and he's on his deathbed, or the grandfather, and he's talking to his grandson, and he says, "Here is a watch," or this is his father. He says, "Here is a watch your grandfather gave me. It's almost 200 years old. Before I give it to you, go to the jewelry store in the city. Tell them that I want to sell it and see how much they offer you." So the son went to the jewelry store, came back to his father, and said they offered $100 because it is old. The father said, "Well, try the pawn shop." The son went to the pawn shop, came back to his father, and said, "The pawn shop offered only $20 because it has a scratch." The father asked his son to go to the museum and show them the watch. The son quietly questioned his father's judgment, but still willing to act on his last wish, he went to the museum. When he came back, he said to his father, "The curator offered $375,000 for the very rare piece to be included in their precious antique collection." The father responded, "I wanted to show you that the right place will value you in the right way. Don't find yourself in the wrong place and get angry because you're not valued. Never stay in a place where someone doesn't see your value or you don't feel appreciated." If you don't know your value, you will always settle for far less than you deserve. People who don't know their value settle for less than they are worth. In relationships, when it comes to their profession or their job or their friends. They know they're worth more, but they settle for someone else's definition of their worth. So it's important to know your worth and have that self-respect. And that if you're in a place that doesn't respect you and you're not appreciated, leave that place, because you should be with, or demand that you do receive that respect. And so I thought that was a cool one. There was a book I recently read. I think it was How to Win Friends and Gain Influence. And the guy said, you could be the sweetest peach in the orchard, but some people just don't like peaches. So sometimes you're great, but some people just don't appreciate you or don't like you. And you are great. You are the sweetest peach in the orchard, but people don't like peaches. So, go find someone who does like peaches. And so I like that concept.
Yeah, I agree. That's great. I think that self-worth, the self-respect, is such an important thing in our life. And I will say from personal experience, it ebbs and flows. Sometimes it's up, and sometimes it's like, and sometimes it's down. And you're like, man, shoot, like I'm not feeling that great,
Mm-hmm.
But I think it is just a constant thing to be cognizant of, and to say, whether you do affirmations or not, that's fine. Whether you stand in front of the mirror and instead of poking and prodding at the muffin top, you stand there and you say, you know what, I'm happy to, I have good hair, or I like my eye color, or man, I
I've got a
grow an
great
awesome beard.
beard.
Yeah, I don't say that. Jared does, but I don't say that. I try not to say, "Oh man, my beard looks real patchy."
You got a great goatee. Say, I have a great goatee. I have a great mustache.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. So just try to find the things that you do enjoy, those positive things, whether it's in your life, your capabilities, your performance, and focus on those things, and more things will come.
Yeah.
I think one huge thing is just to practice self-compassion. I heard a guy talking at church the other day, and he was talking about how he's talking about his relationship with Christ, and he said, I understood how much I loved Jesus Christ, and how much I wanted him to be part of my life, and how much I needed him. He said, I understood all of that, but I didn't truly understand who I was until I knew how much Christ loved me, which I thought was really cool. That he was saying basically that he found his self-worth. Whether you're religious or not, there are people that love you for you, and try to associate with those people. Try to be the person that loves, sometimes or all the time. We can be our own worst critic, but be compassionate, be patient with yourself, but also push yourself. You can tell yourself things that if someone else told you those things, you'd be like, don't ever talk to me again. That would really piss you off. But you can, you better than anybody else. So I think that's just a couple things. I think that just recognizing and identifying if there is an issue, and then attacking it and going after it, and being the best you. I think that's what we're trying to do here on Our Brother's Creed, and that's continually evolving. And I would say being the best me, or my vision of the best me, has even changed a little bit since we started this podcast years ago.
Yeah.
My own personal creed has grown more and shifted and changed a little bit. since day one.
Yeah.
And I think it should be that. I think it should be that way.
Yeah. I think the main thing with with self-respect is just like respecting your own decisions, like giving them weight. And I think that a lot of that has to do with like boundaries and not letting people like push you around or decide for you. And so that's super critical. When we talk about self-doubt, though, I was looking in some different things, and they boil self-doubt into kind of three different categories. One is kind of this imposter syndrome, where you think that you're not worthy or someone's going to find you out, that you don't know what you're talking about. Sometimes I think about that, like in the senior leaders at my company. I'm like, this guy's got no idea what he's doing, man. And then I'm like, how did this guy even get here? But but hey, sometimes you do have legitimate skills and you are legitimately qualified, and people still feel that imposter syndrome. There's a difference between being an actual imposter and having imposter syndrome. That's why it's called syndrome, because it's not real. You are truly there. And then there's the second one, like self-sabotage. Sometimes people will self-sabotage themselves with their self-doubt. That's the best example of this is if you ever watched Survivor. Like everybody will be talking about voting someone out, and there'd be one person that maybe just didn't have maybe got a cold shoulder from someone, or just didn't have the right conversation with another person, and they're not the one on the chopping block. But then they start going around and saying, well, why is everybody, it's me, isn't it? It's me. I know it's me. Why are you guys voting for me? And they cause such a stink that literally they self-sabotage themselves. And everybody like is looking around like, yeah, let's change and let's vote this person out, because they're being an absolute pain right now. And so I've seen that so many times. It's just like sometimes people freak out and they kind of dig their own grave because of the way that they react. At maybe a slight or something that they think is against them. And so they self-sabotage themselves because they have that self-doubt. And then the last one is indecisiveness. We talked about that a few weeks ago, and just like not being able to make that decision. So those are some different ways. So one thing that I was looking at is, well, how do you know if you have self-doubt? Well, here are some questions. Here are 4 questions for you to think about. Well, maybe do I have self-doubt? So one is you can't accept compliments from others, and you can't give yourself credit. So you might have some self-doubt if you have that. I think that a lot of times, I think that sometimes for females, that maybe is more prevalent. I think sometimes for guys, the pride can be so much where they're like, yeah, I did everything. And maybe that one is not as bad. But another one is that you constantly seek reassurance. You are constantly seeking validation and reassurance from everybody, because you don't have that coming from inside you. You need that from outside. A lot of times you'll see this with guys who have issues with their mother growing up. So they will seek reassurance from women by becoming a womanizer and getting as much attention as they possibly can from women, because oftentimes when they were young, they were neglected or they had a poor relationship with their own mothers. You have low self-esteem is another reason. You might have self-doubt. If you don't have any confidence in your abilities or your skills, you're probably going to doubt your confidence to make decisions. And you're like, well, I'm not worthy to make that decision, or my opinion is not respected because I just don't have the skill sets. And you might think that from having a low self-esteem. And then finally, you feel like you're never good enough. And so that one, like right there, is that's when I kind of tie back earlier to like being self-respecting is like whatever you get done today, let that be enough. Is so, and I felt like for a long time, I felt that way. And I feel like maybe that was leading to some self-doubt, or I feel like it was more leading to me not having self-respect because I never felt like I was good enough. I was always chasing something better. And I think it's good to be trying to improve yourself over time, but it was just like, it was more than that. And so that's why I feel like this self-respect aspect when it comes in and says, well, you actually, sometimes what you've done today is enough, and you need to show self-kindness, and don't let people just push you to the brink, because sometimes they'll take everything if you don't respect yourself. So, yeah, I don't know if you had anything to add there, Ethan.
No, agreed. I agree with all that.
Well, that was all I had on these two topics, self-doubt and self-respect. Super important. Not exactly opposites, but very intertwined there. And a time where in the times that we live in, you've got to respect yourself, especially your individual rights as a citizen. I mean, think about how many of your individual rights have been trampled on, absolutely stomped to the ground over the past 3 years. There countless examples.
I almost feel too, whenever I was going through this, that these two things were kind of, or at least self-respect really was kind of the foundation of, I don't know, maybe my personal creed, or it should be the foundation, or it could, I guess, be the foundation of someone's personal creed, right? That you everything's built upon your self-worth, right? If your self-worth is a rickety, old, broken down pillar, then, how can you build something on top of that?
Yeah.
How can you become the best you if your foundation is broken, if you don't even believe in you?
Yeah.
So fixing your self-worth, getting your self-respect right, I think that is a great foundation for any creed in anyone's life.
Absolutely.
So we invite you to build your foundation. Build your foundation and find your self-worth if you have not already. You do have worth. I promise you do. Jared promises that you do.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Go find it and build your creed on top of that amazing worth that you have. That's what I'm going to do, and we invite you to do the same, and let's build that creed together.
Let's do it.